Hey everyone, this is Christopher Luxon, the former CEO of Air New Zealand.
This is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire.
This is Tracy Ibarra. I'm in Executive Solutions at Dell Technologies.
This is Travis Chappell, founder of Build Your Network. If you are wanting to learn how to embrace change,
To navigate through disruption as a leader,
then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast.
The Leadership is Changing podcast.
the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend,
my very good friend, Dennis Giannoutsos.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsos.
I'm in lovely Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Isn't that where you normally live or you live somewhere else?
So Vegas is my U.S. home, but 75% of the time I'm in southern Mexico, next to Guadalajara.
Right. Okay, cool. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you was about your background. So tell us a little bit more about you and about your background.
Yeah, well, I started my careers off in the military right out of high school, where I was able to serve with the Marine Corps Special Operations. When I left my military time, I got lucky break, started with Apple, worked with Apple for many years, from Apple to Amazon. From Amazon, I started dual wielding my days because I had so much free time. And so I worked at Amazon during the nights, and then I'd work at a startup during the day. And then I abandoned Amazon to go work for startups in Santa Monica and LA, where I had opportunity to work with pharmaceutical startups and tech startups. Found my way into healthcare proper, air quotes. And so that was my last venture. I worked at a chronic healthcare organization that focused on the elderly. And then I started a telehealth organization, which I recently stepped away from full time to let a new CEO run it. And then on a sabbatical, also in air quotes.
So you've actually transitioned from being a CEO for a healthcare organization, Optiva, and you've gone now to go and do more of your own thing. Is that correct?
Correct. I operate my own investment.
Yeah, cool. I want to ask you a question around that because, I work with a lot of execs and they look at what they're going to do next in their actual careers and their career paths. And there's different areas they can take. For some of them, they're wanting to leave the large corporates or a corporate role and then go out and do something into a startup, or they might want to go and do their own thing, whether it be a business or go out contracting. But in other areas, as well as what I call a portfolio, they might want to go in, do some investment into some organizations. They might do a small amount of consulting, 2 or 3 directorships, but they sort of have more of a different lifestyle because they may not work, 5 days a week. It's a little bit less. What for you now transitioning from, say, that CEO role to go and doing your own investment business and so forth? What is that transition being like for you?
Well, at first, it kind of felt like I was doing something wrong or playing hooky on work, even though I was very busy from day one. I've always been an investor, but not as my primary means of entertainment. And so I felt weird at first because it wasn't this structured. I had this whole team, directors and executives waiting for me in these meetings. So it was odd. I felt misplaced. But now my day starts when I usually want to start it. I focus on my different part of my brain. So I'm learning music and language. I'm more analytical in mathematics. And so that's how my brain functions in a very organized way. But I'm trying to learn an additional language, trying to be fluent in Spanish, as well as learn to play the guitar. And so when I'm not doing that, I do my investments.
Yeah, very good. And so also I wonder what it's like for some people, because some people want to go and do this, but it's holding them back, or they're holding themselves, maybe fear and other things, the unknown. What would be your advice, or what would be 1 or 2 things you might say to them about if they are thinking about transitioning to go and do something else, what they should put in place or what they should be thinking about before they go and do it?
Security is important for everyone. As a person with a family, understanding what you can afford to do is always one of the biggest hurdles. But for me, it was more so I realized one day that I was running on a treadmill chasing a carrot, and the life that I was seeking to have was standing next to the treadmill watching me. And once I realized that, I don't have to work. I've been smart enough and made good enough decisions made more good decisions than bad decisions at this point. And so I don't really need to show up every day and run a company. So at that point in time, I realized it was time to do something different, something more for myself and more for my family.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's actually sitting there right in front of us, right? Like you said, it was just sitting to the side of the treadmill, the life that's probably looking there, probably had its arms folded, shaking its head at you, going, come on, man, get off that treadmill and let's get on with it, right? So,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Now, what got you into leadership, or how did you get into leadership?
Ooh, I just kind of fell into it. So I've always had an issue standing off at the side and watching things be done certain ways when I know they can be done a certain way, or watching things lack leadership. And so when I first joined the military at 17, I was thrusted into a leadership role in charge of 63 people. And I had been there for a couple of days, a couple of nights, and slept any of it. And then they're like, oh, well, this guy's running things. And so put me in charge of platoon. And then I was in charge of my entire basic. I was in charge of 63 folks. And then from there, I found myself in follow-on schools where I fell into leadership roles. And it's always been that way. And I think it's more so where I have an idea of the way things should be done. And so I have the gumpture to say something about it and do something about it. So I just put myself in those positions.
Yeah. And do you have high expectations of yourself and others when you've had that idea of, I know how things should be run?
Yes. And so I have no one expects more out of me than myself. And that's his own set of issues. And I think that, yes, I have high expectations, but I also, which plays a problem when you're not the person in charge. And I have been a leadership challenge in my days. However, I learned once from a guy, Ray Jarvis from Apple, one of my leaders there, where he said, sometimes realizing when you're not the person with the answers is the most complex question. And so learning that in my life, where I'm like, okay, I'm not the person who's going to lead this or going to answer these questions or these concerns or these voids, that's difficult for someone with my mentality.
And then the next question is, who should be the person running this now?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And tell me, this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
I think there's a lot of people that really come into, I don't think one person.
Sure.
My son, his middle name is going to be Theodore, from Theodore Roosevelt. So I'm a very big fan of Theodore Roosevelt. And, one of my favorite quotes by him is success is the success is the positive mindset we keep between failures. And so, I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan, but also on the charisma side, I'm an Obama fan. I'm a big Ronald Reagan fan. And so it goes back into the ancient times. So I picked from the different characteristics. I don't think there's one perfect leader, but there's a lot of good examples.
And is there one common theme possibly through all of those three different names that you've just mentioned? And there's probably others as well. Is there a common theme that you sort of admire about them?
Yeah, I think it comes down to more so how they behave in some of the most difficult situations. You look at Theodore, you look at Obama, and you look at folks like Ronald Reagan, who during their presidencies, they had very tough times, trying times, recessions, war, and the way that they kind of bared that burden and still maintain themselves as a calm leader, but also being human at the same time. It's admirable.
Yeah. Very good. Now, if you were to have a coffee, in other words, you and Theodore Roosevelt are sitting on a bench, a park bench somewhere, having a coffee or whatever you want to drink, would there be a question? What would be the one question you want to ask him?
That'd be difficult. I would have lots of questions, but if I sat there and I asked Theodore, what would be the thing that encouraged him in his darkest hours? So what's that one thing you look to when you failed beyond the period in which you thought you were going to failed at things you normally succeed at, or just the dark moments? What gave you the strength, with internal, external, to step back up, brush off your shoulders and go at it again? Because we all fail, but it's like, what makes us say, I'm going to endure this opportunity for failure one more time and get up and do it again and then fall down. So that'd be an interesting understanding of his mindset.
Yeah, I think that's what John Wayne talks about, right? The courage is falling off the horse, getting back on the saddle and doing it, feeling the fear and just doing it anyhow.
Yeah. So I guess the quickest 1 minute version of it would be I did a bunch of marketing gigs here and there, high school and college. And then about a year and a half before I was going to graduate, I started Electriq. And then over the past, let's say 3.5, 4 years, I've just been scaling that company, which is a Shopify Plus agency. So we were able to grow it to about 45 team members, primarily specializing in retention marketing. So email and SMS marketing, but also website design and development. Really focused on achieving the highest certifications within the industry, like Klaviyo Elite, Tented Pioneer Partner, and so on. And that led to our acquisition earlier this year in April by a beverage technology company called drinks.com. So the agency is still running, and we're still working with all of our existing clients and bringing on some new ones in the alcohol industry. But a lot of my day-to-day is now focused on the beverage technology side of things and our app with Shopify, enabling wineries and retailers to be able to ship direct consumer across the United States.
Nice, very good. And Electriq, of course, is a leading e-commerce agency, marketing agency, and sounds like a very exciting time. Now, what made you think about wanting to start Electriq?
So at the time, it really was just me making some money so that I could go out and do things in school. And I knew long term that I wanted to start my own business. I was more so interested in entrepreneurship than I was necessarily marketing. It's not like I had this undying passion for starting a marketing agency. It was more about, I want to start my own business. What are some of the areas that I could potentially do that in? And it sort of aligned because starting your own marketing agency is very low cost, especially in the early days. It's just you and you're selling your services. So we hit an inflection point around probably 3 months before graduation time where it was sort of is this something that can support me and the team, or is it not? Because if it's not, then I need to accept real job offers that I had. And if it is, then we're just going to go for it here. So I sort of fell into it a little bit in that sense, but I knew I always wanted to do things entrepreneurial. And luckily, because of this, now I will be able to continue to pursue that. So
yeah, great. And one of the reasons I got you onto the show is that the fact that you're a Gen Z entrepreneur, and love to hear from your perspective around from a Gen Z sort of, age group, generation. Mm-hmm. Love to hear from you about leadership and that as we go through today's questions as well and our dialogue. Now, before we get underway, sport. Do you follow any sport?
All the major, say, U.S. sports, I'm a follower of. There's ones that I like more than others. Yeah. But I'm always checking Bleacher Report every day and getting in my ESPN here and there. So I gravitate more towards basketball than anything because that's what I played. But football, baseball, hockey, even started to get into UFC a lot more. I just enjoy anything that has to do with competition and anything physical.
Yeah, good. And basketball, who's your favorite team?
I'm a little bit broken on that one because I moved to Miami. So now I'm going to go to the Heat games, and I guess I'm supposed to be a Heat fan. But I grew up watching the Lakers, but I don't really like them being my favorite team because they're everybody's favorite team, it feels like. So I don't really know. I'm going to go with, I'd say I don't have one, but I definitely, when the playoffs are happening, I'll pick a team and then I'll root for them and go with them. But I'm more of a enjoyment of the sport and not necessarily super devoted to one team.
Nice. Well, we just got news yesterday here in New Zealand because Steven Adams, I don't know if you know that player, but he's massive. He's just been re-signed another contract with his team, another $45 million contract. It's pretty awesome and exciting for him. Well, it might be $45 million New Zealand dollars, maybe. Yeah.
I think he's the only, there's some interesting fact about him. He's not the only New Zealand professional basketball player, but from wherever he's from, he's the only one or something like that. There's some interesting tidbit about him that I learned.
Well, he comes from a sporting family, right? His sister was Olympic champion, gold medalist in shot put, which was really amazing, Valerie Adams. His other sister, and there's several kids, and another sister in the Paralympics just won medal as well, the latest Paralympics, and that's so pretty cool. Alrighty, let's get into the questions here a little bit more. So how did you get into leadership?
I just sort of fell into it because entrepreneurship naturally leads you there. It's almost a prerequisite if you're going to be an entrepreneur that at some point you're going to need to have a leadership position and role, unless maybe you bring on a different CEO and they're going to operate as that and you focus more internally on the product or something. But I mean, at some point, you're going to be a leader of other people if you are in entrepreneurship.
Yep. Now, you said you fell into it that way, but were you in any other kind of leadership roles, university, college, things like that?
No, so I really, really did not like the organizations or the clubs, not because there was anything wrong with them necessarily. It just wasn't real. So that was always what sort of tied me up about some of these organizations, is that you were in university and you were not in the real world actually doing it. And so I spent more of my time focusing on the business than I did necessarily trying to take on leadership roles in school organizations or things like that. So,
and did you do any sort of to upskill yourself in the leadership side of things? Did you do reading? Did you do courses? Did you get a mentor, coach around you? How did you help yourself around that space?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of mentors who helped me along the way and even made me realize to begin with that I had this desire in me to explore the entrepreneurship path, and then started reading a bit as well. Sort of fell off reading, but actually have reinvigorated myself to start reading like a book a week now, which I've been doing for about a month and a half, and it's been really insightful. And I don't like to read anything that is, I like to have things to take away. So going through, taking actual notes that I can then think about, how can I implement this in my day-to-day life, or how can I test this out at work to see if it could potentially be beneficial to me or the company or my team members. So I think mentorship is really important, and also just a desire to learn, because I went through, everything I learned from actual tactical initiatives to more higher level like leadership stuff. A lot of it comes from just Google. I mean, if you have a question, the answers are out there, and especially on the actual deliverable side of things with a marketing agency, you haven't done it until you've done it. And so there were a lot of things that were sold in the early days that it's not like I had 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience doing that, but all the information was out there to be able to make me an expert in whatever it was that we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's interesting, that we have those kind of things out there like Google and other things, YouTube, your videos, people sharing kind of information that we can go to and learn from. I just say to people, just be careful, making sure it's quality information that you're going to get, right? So otherwise,
vet your sources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some really interesting people out there, and so just make sure you do vet the source that you're getting and the resources that you were getting from, and the information that you're getting as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.